those people who are defiant and really want to give children to marry at least have a law that tries to bar them from doing that.
The protection of children is key, especially if there is legislation put in place which will define the legal age for marriage to strengthen and consider the plight of children who are often lured into early and forced marriage.
We need to see how we have a definitive minimum legal age to marriage, which is not subject to anything. I think we all have regards to the personal law. As Muslims, it's very important that we observe. But I am sure Islam also would frown upon anything that science, that health has shown could have an adverse effect on one's life. So Islam is opposed to anything that would hamper one's development or one's health, especially children.
The Day of the African Child is a day that should not just be commemorated once in a year, but on a daily basis as children all over the continent continue to face all forms of violations that hinders their development. It is important that all efforts are put in every day to protect children at all times. Reporting for Grts News, I am Abdullah Baji.
As the President's dialogue with the People's Tour enter another week, people are not relenting in their efforts to take stock of some major projects initiated by the APRC government. This report by Ibrahim Balad takes a closer look at road construction, infrastructure and easy access to villages within the same catchment area, something that was almost unthinkable before 1994.
Vehicles plying the North Bank region's major highway can do so freely without any delay. This was unthinkable before 1994. Road construction and infrastructure featured prominently in the Jadme administration development master plan in the early days of its coming to power. This bridge was constructed after many people had dismissed the idea entirely owing to cultural beliefs or norms. Many residents of this area believe this is one of the most iconic projects of the Jadme administration as far as North Bank region is concerned. CFO Ibrahim Jammeh recalled how the people suffered day in, day out whilst trying to reach to their various places of destination.
People used to suffer a lot actually. You come from Banjul, when you happen to come late, you will have to spend the night overside. Or otherwise you will have to trek back to the first village, which is Dasilame, to spend the night. And even during the day, you have a lot of time to waste because of that crossing. But nowadays, well, it's just like drinking water. You just cross few seconds, you're on the other side. Never mind how late you cross Bara, you will come and spend the night in Farafenni. Or you can proceed to Basse.
To him, the AFPRC General Hospital remains one of the most iconic development projects ever constructed in the North Bank region.
At the early part of his tenure, you have this AFPRC General Hospital. When you're coming into Farafenni, you can't miss it. It's on the left. Well, we are very, very, very grateful to him. Like I said, so many projects happened. And we, the Badibunkas, we benefited a lot from that, from him. And we'll always be grateful.
Throughout the regions, people are expressing their happiness for the various developments that have been brought to their doorstep thanks to the Jadme administration. Ibrahim Balde, GRTS.
Northern Ireland is set to host the G8 summit, haunted by its checkered history of instability and scenes of bombings. How will Belfast handle this elite meeting with protesters promising to blight the show? And in Iran, many are wondering whether a change in the presidency will usher in any difference. We'll be back with these and other stories right after the break. Welcome back. Many people had dismissed the Iranian election, suggesting that the vote was a foregone conclusion. because the winner of the election had already been decided by the country's most powerful man, the Ayatollah. However, as we hear in this report by CNN's Reza Sayar, many questions remain unanswered as thousands of jubilants celebrate Hassan Rouhani's victory.
Moderate cleric Hassan Rouhani is the winner of Iran's presidential elections, an outcome that has energized Iranian reformists desperate for change and stunned regime critics who said the vote was a sham and Rouhani would never beat his ultra-conservative opponents. His rivals were viewed as staunch regime loyalists, the powerful supreme leader's trusted yes-men. Rouhani trounced them all, winning more than 50% of the vote to avoid a second-round runoff. When campaigning kicked off last month, few analysts picked Rouhani to win, but his campaign quickly gained steam when he did what few Iranian politicians dare: criticize the regime. His attacks were tactful and subtle, yet passionate. He fired up campaign rallies by condemning the regime's tight grip on security, calling for reform and better relations with the West. Suddenly, Iran's young reformists and pro-democracy activists who initially said they would boycott the vote started paying attention. Turnout of more than 70% suggests many eventually came out and voted for Rouhani. His landslide win shows Iranians want reform, but it's far from clear if Rouhani can deliver. Despite his new title as reformist, Rouhani has long been viewed as part of Iran's ruling establishment, dominated by Iran's ultimate authority, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Reform and improved relations with the West won't happen without the supreme leader's approval. However, for the first time in a long time, reformists appear to have a voice in Iran's halls of power, backed by a dominating election day win. Despite the surprising outcome, many inside and outside Iran still skeptical about what this vote means and whether Rouhani will actually be able to accomplish anything. Can he impact Iran's nuclear standoff with the West? Can he fix the economy, create jobs? Reformists will want to know, will he free political prisoners, bring about social freedoms? Ultimately, these are the big issues Rouhani will be judged on, but for now, his supporters celebrating the big win. Reza Sayar, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
Free trade within member nations, crackdown on banking secrecy and tax avoidance are some of the major issues to dominate the G8 summit when it opens in Northern Ireland next week. Jim Bolden tells us that the summit will attempt to look at a myriad of challenges facing developed countries.
What does French language television have to do with trade talks and the G8 summit? Everything, apparently. In order for summit host British Prime Minister David Cameron to announce the launch of historic free trade talks with the U.S., the groundwork is supposed to be laid at the G8. But one big stumbling block is whether Europe can keep its limits on the amount of American TV that airs in countries like France. And can France continue to subsidize local film and television, which it sees as a cultural imperative? There are many hurdles to even beginning these formal free trade talks.
I think the G8 will matter and will be important if you can get an agreement on free trade. I don't think many of the other issues that it will talk about matter that much.
Also on the agenda, Mr. Cameron wants to make a splash with some sort of commitment to cracking down on offshore banking secrecy by revealing the ownership of shell companies, plus agreements to tackle tax avoidance by multinational companies. But major deals are hard to come by in these meetings. The G8 has lost some of its shine to the larger G20 group, which has incorporated the likes of China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and South Korea. Another difference from previous meetings, the old G7 before Russia joined used to gather informally in big cities. It was here in 1991 that the UK hosted the G7 summit in the heart of London. Demonstrations have occasionally descended into violence, and that means the meetings are being pushed to ever more remote areas. So while London saw some minor disturbances from anti-G8 protesters in recent days, the leaders are gathering in a remote golf resort in Northern Ireland. Last time, the UK hosted it at a golf resort in remote Scotland. Over the years,